Tucker Carlson, his brother, same family, obviously, are vile public anti Semites. It's not a view they hold privately. Does that extend to his son, Buckley, who works for J.D. Vance? This is a federal employee of a man that is one heartbeat away from the presidency, and he's a 29-year-old man. Now, you bet your butt if George Soros or Bill Gates' son worked for Kamala Harris, we would be asking
Yeah.
these questions all day, every day, because it matters.
So, Sloan, the reason I had to reach out to you is probably like why most of the world has been likely reaching out to you at this point. There was a little bit of a back and forth with the old vice president. And as soon as I read into your story, I immediately said, I like this woman. Because it does not matter what position, a seat in power. It doesn't matter if you agree with the people around somebody. You're somebody who calls yourself a journalist. And in a world filled with propagandists, you weren't playing the political game. Right. And so that's something that really caught my attention. And so the first thing I want to ask is, who is Sloan? Like, why are you in the space? How did you get here? Why bother yourself?
Yes, it is a tremendous bother. Thank you very much for the intro. No, I mean, really,
Absolutely.
I've been stalked, arrested, called out by the vice president, which was great. I mean, journalists work their whole lives of a 30 and 40-year career to be recognized by the president and the vice president. So I am so honored that he took time out of his Sunday to sound off on me and to reveal actually
Mm,
more about him than about me, but a little bit about my background. So I do have, sadly, intimate background with terrorism. I was a first responder during 9/11 for 6 months with Salvation Army, so I was able to see firsthand what terrorism does to the lives of innocent people who have lost their loved ones. And then I almost lost my life during the Boston Marathon when I was waiting for my husband to cross the finish line. I was about to sit on the bleachers when they exploded. um, I have up close and personal experience with terrorism, sadly. And
mm,
I've been a journalist for the last, I think, 15 years now, mostly investigative, which means original work, where I take something and I joke with people and I say everything's a conspiracy theory in my world until I write the story, right? You come up with these curious things that may or may not be true and you investigate them. But lately I've been doing political commentary here in North Carolina and now nationally.
mm. Wow. So, okay, you got a little bit more than an incentive to tell the truth, right? Your life has been literally threatened by this thing. And when I look to this entire landscape of social media, new media, etc., we have two camps. We have the Sloans, who is like, I am in this because my life has been affected. And then we have the rest, which is, I'm here to profit off of this thing, and I will say anything and do anything necessary to profit. Right. And so I guess I want to start here. In 15 years of journalism, um, how have you been able to keep yourself pure, if that makes sense? Not to have this other side sort of seep in and to be influenced by the, I guess, rage baitiness of it all.
Well, that's fundamentally in one's constitution, right? If you are motivated by external um, uh, stimulation, first of all, you're kind of a slave to the environment, meaning you have to have external approval in order to drive you forward. My loci is internal, and that means
Mm,
doing what I think will save the most people. My love is saving people, helping people. That's kind of where
mm,
I'm based at. If I get attention for it, great. um Often I do not, and frequently it's very negative attention. um Death threats. I've learned that when you're saying something that people don't want to hear, they'll go to very drastic measures to stop you from saying it. So,
yeah. And so, okay, so 15 years, obviously, you have likely seen almost everything change, right? Things that, like you said, were once conspiracy, and it turns out that they were probably crazier than even the conspiracy was to begin with. And so I guess because I want to build our way into, this most recent thing debacle with the vice president and even my own perspective and views, right? Which is again, why did this resonate? Because I also had my own hesitations and, and cautions. So what was the first, I guess, big American story that you started delving into and, essentially you hooked your sunk your teeth into, and how has that thing unfolded to this point?
Well, I first started covering anti-Semitism on campus through extremist movements, and that
Mhm.
was happening where I was here in North Carolina, but it was happening broadly all across the country. So I'm a Harvard alum, and when I graduated in 2007, I never saw anti-Semitism at all. And then, obviously that's, the hotbed of anti-Semitism. That's what you think of right now, right? But I started that.
Yeah.
Um, and then, obviously my interest with terror networks. And so doing not foreign policy as much, but just, studying the movements. And so I would track radical movements from different cities and track them all the way to where they would go train in Ramallah with my partners, you know, in that area, and, it became, now everyone knows about it, right? But I was kind of cutting edge on that, so
And so what was it like again, are you in a place where you have a sense of just how terrible this thing is, how real it is? Are you thinking to yourself, this is just something flyby? Because like you said, at a certain point, there was no real anti-Semitic threat looming, and now, I mean, we have millions of Jews going back home, right? That is a reality you couldn't have fathomed, I'm sure, when you started.
well, I mean, anti-Semitism is the oldest conspiracy theory, really, and the oldest hate. So, yes, I think I have known about anti-Semitism on the left for quite a while, and I've known about anti-Semitism on the right, for quite a while because I was stalked, and hunted by a group of neo-Nazis here in North Carolina politically because I'm also a consultant. I ran a black candidate for office. I work in Republican politics.
Mm.
And these particular people did not want blacks nor do Jews at all into the Republican Party. And so him and I both became a victim of stalking. And that was about 5 years ago. Or 4 years ago. So I've been cognizant of anti Semitism on the right because, quite frankly, the only anti-Semitism that has directly threatened me and come for me is anti-Semitism on the right.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a difference.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's a difference between hatred on the right and the left. Um,
Mhm.
Anti-Semitism on the left is mainly anti-Zionist, which means they don't want the state of Israel to exist. Anti-Semitism on the right is they don't want Jews to exist in this country, period, by whatever means. So it's a bit more lethal of a strain than the one on the left. Now, the one on the left is also racist. And I think now a lot of progressive blacks are finding that out who are in the movements. But the one on the right most definitely is. So we have a virulent strain of, I don't know, if you want to soft pedal it, you would say intolerance, but we have some real dangerous issues.
So again, I want to take it back to sort of that the inception of this entire thing. You're studying or looking into these extremist groups. I guess this is post obviously September 11th. This is post what you call it, Boston Marathon
Yeah.
bombing.
Well,
And
this is
so
during.
are
So I began writing about it
okay.
before, um, and then
Ah,
I was in it.
that is insane. Okay, so uh, are you in a place where you're thinking to yourself, is this, synced with jihad? Is this an external threat? Are you going for the mainstream narrative of what happened that day? Like, where are you since this is, not part of your personal story?
Well, it's weird because, September 11th, I can watch the documentaries, I can watch, the actual attack happen, and I can study it. Um, but I cannot do that with the Boston Marathon because I was there. So something about that prevents me from revisiting that, studying it, or really wanting to. understand it. But I mean, I study a lot with, and I actually have colleagues now at Middle East Forum and other think tanks where we're writing on the subject. I'm learning from them on the subject. So I'm kind of fuller understanding. But I think the really important thing to being a journalist, A, is being curious, but B, never believing your own BS. So that means
Hmm.
you never really reach a conclusion and you're always open to other learned perspectives on the matter.
Mhm. Okay. So I want to get into this thing of kind of the infiltration that has happened. I mean, it's easy to just blanket statement and say MAGA, but I feel like there's something more specific and insidious that's been happening. And so, like you said, I've had my own assumptions that I've come to, things that I've researched, but it's like, what do you actually know? And then it's probably much deeper, or in some cases, you're all the way off. And so, again, this last sort of 15 years, I want to reference it in your career in journalism. Was there always the conversation for you of the jihad threat, Islam, now the Islamic Brotherhood and the tentacles of, who's paying who? And was that always something that was top of mind for you that you're researching? Is this stuff that you just came across and was eye opening?
No, I mean, when you look at the Muslim Brotherhood, that is useful to think of it this way. That is the ocean in which all terror groups swim. So it is the general supporter of of the Islamic ideology, be it soft power ideology, which is what you see now with influencers bought, um, you know, Trump being wooed and others by the Qataris. So that's one thing. But then strict jihad support, mainly. I mean, one of the things about the US is we're one of the biggest importers of or exporters, excuse me, of jihad. So a lot of jihadists train, they do their soft power training here. There's a lot of things that go on in this ecosystem. And so that's one of the things that surprised me as well. So I mean, my first study obviously was who was a Taliban, right? If you want to start at this very rudimentary level, um, what is ISIS? That ISIS K, how it evolved, what's the Sunni and Shia, matrix, all of that. It's very um complicated, and I don't claim to be an expert, but so that's the first place I studied. Then you had the Pulse nightclub, which is really pinnacle for me. The Pulse nightclub bombing in Orlando, and it was just this. I started to realize that not all, clearly, not all Muslims are terrorists, and in fact,
Of course.
Muslims are generally the first victims of Islam, particularly women, children, gays, obviously. But as a Christian, that the closer that you get to the word of God and the scripture, generally the better off you're going to be. Let's say, all right, you get married, you start showing up to work
Hmm.
on time.
Yeah.
There's an internal motivator for you to do better. When Muslims start to frequent the mosque a lot and get deep into Islam, that becomes a national security threat. So that's the difference here.
And so I do want you to get a little deeper into these subjects and don't mind. Like I want you to ramble. I want you to go all the way in. Okay. So you're speaking of essentially, top level, who are these different groups? The ocean that, as you explained, is the Islamic Brotherhood. And so I want to start there. Who is the Islamic Brotherhood? What are they doing? And then I guess in addition to that, are they connected to Qatar, Saudi, etc.? Or, should we believe the Crown Prince and the rest of these guys that there's no connection there?
Well, again, I don't claim to be an expert, but I do know that the funding mechanism, obviously petrodollars coming from Qatar mainly. Um, but, in diplomacy in general, whether it's, Russia, America, et cetera, you've got soft power and hard power. So soft power would be your PR stuff, your diplomacy, if you will, your propaganda. So the interesting thing about Qatar is they play the soft power very, very well. Um, and so, that's how they do it. Now they create or they control geography, with terrorism. So if you're going to be a player now in the Middle East, right? In the 70s, it was different. But if you're going to be a player now in the Middle East, um, people understand terrorism very well, right? They
Yeah.
understand how that would control it. So they will sponsor terrorism generally, in areas that, I mean, they work hand in hand with Iran, et cetera. So we kind of know these things, right? But the soft power is a big deal. I'm one of the first ones that published on Qatar funding our K through 12 system. I did that in 2018. I wrote a story where they did it here in North Carolina and other places. So they're in, K through 12. They're in, obviously in our universities too.
And what did that look like? Like, where's the money going specifically? What is the sort of outcomes? Who knows the involvement? Is it superintendent level? Like,
No,
I don't want to live in the world of conspiracy ever. So what does that look like?
no, what it looks like is this. In particular, UNC and Duke
Mhm.
have a consortium for the Middle East. So when we talk about Middle East studies in America, there are 16 schools, 16 colleges with consortiums on the Middle East or Middle East studies, right? And so
Okay.
these schools will get a grant from QFI, which is Qatari Foundation International, which is Qatar,
Okay.
to do a teacher training program so that, 100 teachers can come in, be indoctrinated. And part of this particular training was they were also involved in creating their own curriculum. So they would actually do what's called praxis. So it's not just sitting there and being an empty vessel for a week. It's creating curriculum they actually intend to roll out that really soft pedals Islam to K through 12.
Hmm. So with these kids, you're probably seeing grassroots, what's actually happening in the schools. Are you seeing like is it a sort of pulling out of the
Yeah,
Judeo-Christian ethos and then replacing
yeah,
it? Is that what it
yeah.
is?
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's
Mm,
it's actually, I think, softening the battlefield for Islam to implant itself into our country, much like Tucker Carlson is doing, much like Megyn
mm,
Kelly is doing. I don't care what anyone says, she's doing it. Anyone who is spouting off nonsense, unverified nonsense. Look, I just told you, I'm a journalist. The way that we are, we're curious and we don't believe our
yeah,
own BS, right? We believe from learned people and we're able to sound check that. So I know what it's like to behave as a journalist very well. I
yeah.
don't know what it's like to behave as a propagandist. That's why I'm confounded
Mm,
to understand why this is going on. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like what you see now is what they would teach in K through 12, where, you know, Islam isn't the problem. Whatever you've heard, um, gosh, I'm not sure if that's really it. In fact, um, Muslims are persecuted, and I believe that generally in their own countries, certainly not in America, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So, because again, I'm now in the weeds of this thing. I'm like, is this also have to do with why, like, growing up in a place like California, what did I learn about the Holocaust? Almost nothing, right? I basically learned nothing. And I went to a Catholic school for, take it or leave it, whatever that might be worth. But it seemed that as I was sort of getting out of high school and seeing the next generation, this critical race theory was kicking in. And connected to that was the thing of black and brown people. It used to just be black. And then all of a sudden it's the brown people, and it's like, who's brown? Okay, well, it's Hispanic. And then now we see this full connection of Islam to brown people. And so now when you have conversations of colonial history, you have slavery, etc., you never hear of Islam, who is the greatest perpetrator, or, the Arab slave trade, or any
Without a
of that.
doubt.
And it's just, yeah. So are some of these the initiatives that are pushed, or is this just grassroots Marxism?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely grassroots and it's everywhere. Now in California, you've got something called ethnic studies, which is a virulent
Mhm.
strain of CRT. But it's very interesting what you say. And in fact, I say this with my black colleagues all the time. You guys really haven't gotten your own civil rights movement at all in modern times. In other words, look at what happened with BLM. That was transplanted with trans. So that has nothing to do with it. And people made the ignorant equating of slavery with being trans. That was extremely offensive, right? And so it's being done to Black Americans, it's being done to Jewish Americans. And I'm frankly really glad about this conversation because it this is both. CRT eventually
Yeah.
put both of us in the crossfire. So it's interesting that CRT was rolled out to protect people definitely like you and maybe like me, right? People who are not white Christian Americans, right? But it's very interesting that it was used as a weapon by white Christian Americans in control now. Because if you've noticed, they can flip it, all right, to use it as a pretext to exclude Black people and Jews, number one. And then number two, it was literally BLM and CRT. It was meant to equal the playing field for Black people, particularly, I thought, Black men. And what it ended up being is move over, we're putting trans in. And now that trans is not usable, you're right. Now it's Muslims.
Mhm. And so, again, with that infiltration in the education system, because, sometimes I'll talk about this and we may have the conversation, but folks don't understand what that actually means. The significance and I guess the gravity of they're coming through our schools. They're coming for the kids. Like, we thank God when it came to the trans conversation, we were able to say, hey, we're not doing this to some extent, right? On the conservative platform. But then when it comes to this, it's like, do we not understand that it's the exact same attack model? And even more so with jihad,
Right.
having its own, whether it's the ballot or the bullet, they don't mind, but it's all about conquest and it always has been. And so, I then want to push into, because you brought up a couple of names. So, when you were coming up, you were a journalist in the same respect, I would say, as a Megan, as a Tucker. Though they may be on, mainstream television or whatever, you're still working in the same space. Now, are these two individuals specifically, were they people who genuinely believe what they were saying, or do you believe it was just because they were a part of an organization, they said whatever was aligned, and then where are they at this point,
Right. Well,
in your own
I have
opinion?
direct experience with Tucker because I wrote a few articles for Daily Caller, which he started, and then the American Conservative I wrote
Mm,
several articles for. So while Rod Dreher actually was the main editor there, you may have read some of his commentary lately. So, and even then I was very suspicious. I think this is probably 2015, but I was suspicious. I'm like, yeah, there's some stuff in here that seems a touch I don't remember what it was, but it was certainly exclusionary. And brought it up,
okay.
didn't think anything of it. So um Tucker directly, I'm not sure. I mean, I was a big fan of his, full candor. Um, and so, I just like everyone else liked what he was saying. So I really didn't question it. Right. Um, but I thought he did good work. And I thought he did good work because he was raising questions that others would not raise. That's really the harm and getting answers. Getting answers. I mean, you can raise
Yeah.
questions right now. Did we actually land on the moon or was it Mars? Right? And they're ridiculous questions, but questions that could be answered. And he did. Now, Megan Kelly, by contrast, has always been stupid. She is a graduate of Syracuse Law, I believe, low tier law
Mhm.
school. She was brought on by Bill O'Reilly. Just, she had a little spunk, very attractive, and that's important. It's hugely important when you're presenting. But, yeah, I mean, she's been all over the place. So she eventually left Fox News because, someone made a pass at her, right? Then she went to NBC, and I find this crazy. For one of the first interviews she did was President Trump's alleged accusers of sexual assault. Then she did another show about the wonders of trans children. That's her evolution.
Hmm.
Then massively unpopular, untalented, so she left. And then apologized for, "Oh, I've seen the light." Then went after trans, which was appropriate, right? Because and her thesis was like mine and like yours. Children, okay, are special. we should take special
Yeah,
protections, and they should not be indoctrinated with
absolutely.
trans. But then recently, she came out and very flippantly, I was very critical of her on this, very flippantly said, well, Epstein, it's not like his victims were 8. They were like 14, 15, barely legal. They were not legal. And actually, the National Organization to Protect Child Trafficking and Endangered Children came out and said, apologize, right? So there's somebody who, um, she's what's called high on her own supply, right? She is someone who loves
Okay.
external validation. That's what drives her. That's what's motivating her. Um,
Hmm.
Tucker is a very angry person saying, well, if this pisses you off that I'm saying these things, I'm just going to keep getting more outrageous and more outrageous. He's a deeply angry person on a level that I don't know that I've personally seen. It's like
Hmm.
just under violent, just under going postal.
You know what's incredible about you saying that is, like, I mean, as of what, maybe the last 30 minutes or so before our call, I was going through some of the footage that I was doing on a Tucker video, and I saw the comparison of him when he was on Fox till now. And I said it's interesting because you could see the scowl on his face back then, and now it's this on edge, almost Joker-esque
Oh, yeah.
type
Okay.
of demeanor, right? Where he's always on the verge. And to me, I'm like, okay, psychologically speaking, that's a coping mechanism or some sort of cover or whatever. As far as, I'm more afraid of the person who is maniacally laughing half the time at all inappropriate times than I am of the person with the scowl. All right, at least I know what the scowl is about. This guy may feel some type of way. This guy, I'm not certain of. And so you've kind of brought this together for me to say that anger. And fast forward to one of the first, probably last turning point events that he does when he's actually debating somebody who doesn't agree with them completely, and he just loses it.
A couple times.
A couple, right, exactly. So there was, I think that there's 2 videos that went viral from, his headliner, and I thought to myself, this might be the best thing that we could actually have happening is to put him in front of anybody who disagrees because his true colors will show. So it's incredible with somebody with even more insight to say this is a person who has that underlying rage. It's like passive aggressive energy, but underlying is this seething. And so that hatred for Jews is a real thing for
Hmm.
him in essence.
Yeah.
Is that someone you would agree with? Because that's the sentiment I get is like he's actually obsessed. Some of them are grifters and,
Well,
it's whoever's kind of in the line of fire.
yeah, there are some people that will take, um, they're treated wrongly at work, uh, romantic relationship, whatever, um, by a Jew or by a black man, right? They'll take one and extrapolate it to all. That's called a racist. Um, so, did that happen? I don't know. I mean, I theorized. I mean, and this is what I do. I mean, I theorized that look, his mother left him at
Mm.
6. Okay, the
Interesting.
father was a wonderful man. I've heard. I know people that have worked directly with him. Um, did
Yeah.
she take off with a Jewish guy? Of course. I mean, that's a look, that's a deep wound. And look at
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
and his brother are both sick, sick anti-Semites. So that is an excellent question. Now, of course, I was roundly criticized for asking that question. That makes the most sense to me.
Wow. Why is it that sometimes we depersonalize these things? It's like as if these are immutable individuals who who can't have childhood traumas like anybody else.
Yeah, well, not me. I mean, and that's the most obvious thing to me. You got 2 anti-Semites, right? The father was a wonderful man, etc., but the father didn't hurt them. The mother hurt them. So, I mean, I think
Wow.
it's a fair question. And another fair question is how deep does that extend? Because what are the odds that you or someone is an inappropriate, ridiculous, off the rails anti Semite? What are the odds that their brother would be? I mean, how far does this go? And we're talking about
Mm.
one step away from being president. We know that the son, now we know because most people did not know. Now we know that the son This is a reasonable question. It's a question that must be answered for the American people. Is this a thing with the family? I mean,
Yeah.
yes. We got the brother and the son, or the brother and Tucker.
Mm. And so I do want to get into that because, you were somebody who was bold enough to say it and even, have the retort and response for it with the vice president himself. So can you unpack that for us? Like, how did that start? Was this just a story you fell upon and you just had questions and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in the middle of fire or what?
Well, first of all, I don't know that a lot of people in America knew that Buckley it's confusing. Buckley is the name of Tucker's brother and son.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
younger
Interesting.
Buckley, who's 29 years old, by the way, um, I don't think a lot of people knew that he was working in the vice president's office. I knew some others. So this happened, I think, 2 weeks ago, but it was on the heels of um, Tucker Carlson's brother going on like a 3-day Mel Gibson binge on Jews, calling them cockroaches, all these things, going after Jews online. So I said, now this is a problem. And I raised
Yeah.
the question. I said, look, we've got the most prominent anti Semite in America, Tucker Carlson. We've got his brother vying for second place here. I think it's fair to understand the biases via ethnicity and religion. Um, someone in the vice president's office. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly, but I think we need to
Mm-hmm.
know: does he share those same biases? And very
Mm-hmm.
inappropriately. And I mean, it was just weird. Okay. But by the way, that weekend I was attacked by Daryl Cooper, who was the um,
A
Hitler
figure.
lover, right? I was attacked by Matt
Yep.
Walsh, Aaron McIntyre, and others. So I've been attacked by these three.
What was the Matt Walsh situation about?
Um, I don't remember, but it's something that I said about Tucker. I mean, it was something I said about general woke rightness. Well, they didn't like it.
Okay.
So um, I raised the question, did not tag the vice president. I'm not an account. Look, I don't have a lot of followers. I have 50,000 followers because I block so many people. I think I blocked 6,000 people. When you block, it's going to mess up your algorithm and you will
Mm-hmm.
have throttled traffic, right? So I don't have a big account. So did not tag the vice president at all. Didn't even talk about him. I raised a question. So, on a Sunday,
And what was that question? Because
question
some
was
folks don't they might have no idea.
I
Mhm.
raised a question that um, Tucker Carlson, his brother, same family, obviously, are vile public anti Semites. It's not a view they hold privately. Um, does that extend to his son, Buckley, who works for JD Vance? This is a federal employee of a man that is one heartbeat away from the presidency, and it's a 29-year-old man. Now, you bet your butt if George Soros or Bill Gates' son worked for Kamala Harris, we would be asking
Yeah,
these questions all day, every day, because it matters. So
absolutely.
the vice president retweeted me and quote tweeted me actually and put Sloan Rachmuth, journalist. I'm gonna, not only quoted, but subtweeted twice. I mean, he was mad as hell. Called me a scumbag. Also questioned my Judeo ethics because no church he ever went to taught these things. Now, that was a slam on my religion. That's what I felt,
Yeah.
and that's what I know. So he actually raised more questions than he answered. And I responded that, look,
Hmm.
um, we have a right to know as the American people about what a 29-year-old staffer of yours, what kind of views they hold since their family is out here carrying on and performing anti-Semitism of the worst kind. And because Nick Fuentes got an infomercial, a 2-hour infomercial by Tucker Carlson, and he hates
Yeah.
blacks, he hates Indians,
Mhm.
he despises women. So I'm asking the question I think a lot of people want to know. And
Do you share the same views?
no, does his employee? I mean,
Buckley.
correct.
Right.
I mean, This is the guy who is head of all of the vice president's communications.
Okay, I didn't know that part. This is vital. This isn't a guy picking up his coffee, etc., leaving it at the other assistant. This is communications. Okay. Okay.
He
Um
travels with the president, or vice president. My understanding is he went to Israel with the vice president. And his communications when he was coming out of Israel were abysmal. That's number one. Number two, Tucker had it's a pretty famous interview now with Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly asked him,
yeah.
"Hey, you're being criticized about this Nick Fuentes interview." He responds, "I don't care. All I care about is what my kids think of me and what my wife thinks of me. So your kid is okay with Nick Fuentes. Otherwise, you would backpedal on it." There's a
Yeah.
direct line from Tucker Carlson that makes my question absolutely essential to be answered. It must be answered.
And so after this attack, what was the backlash as well as support? What happened as the aftermath?
Well, the support was overwhelming. Um, the support was overwhelming. I'm actually on the National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism also. So I was up in DC the very next day and in DC throughout the entire week. I think the feeling from most people, unless they were Tucker's puppets like Megyn Kelly, Robbie Starbuck was another one, a couple of others, um, was you pick someone with very few followers who asked a reasonable question and you lost your complete anger over that.
Hmm.
And by the way, no one in America knew that Tucker Carlson's son worked for you, and you told him. Um, you are spending more, and this is the painful part, I would imagine, for him and his wife. Everyone said you spent more time and effort defending Tucker Carlson's son to somebody that had 50,000 followers than your own wife and son, who are regularly just viciously attacked on huge platforms. It tells you a lot about the man.
That's the part that really got me is so when are we getting the Nick Fuentes rebuke
Mm.
on calling your wife a Jeet? When do we get that? That genuine okay, and I have my own coming from the Bay Area, knowing the technocrat situation there, right? The Peter Thiels of the world, I grew up down the street from PayPal Mafia. And so there's this double-edged sword almost, right? One cuts, one slices your bread. And it's okay. So this is a man who is connected to Peter Thiel, who then made the introduction to Don Jr., and then Don Jr. makes a connection to the president. Used to be anti-Trump. I get it, absolutely. Many were. So, there's still, and I blindsided myself to it because of, you know, the leftist push was so apparent at a certain point that it was the only thing that
Correct.
existed and until and we're like in that until moment where now it's like wait a minute, okay, we're here on this conservative platform but like what is this actually? Who is a part of it? Am I even a part of it? What are we doing here? And so you answer some of those kind of or even open up the conversation for some of those most important questions, which is okay, we're putting our full support behind JD, and it's like wait, but don't we need to analyze first, right? Because technically it's because of Trump. And I can say, no man is perfect, but I believe that man has an agenda for the American people. Otherwise, he would have stepped off a stage in Butler, Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and called it quits, hit the golf club, spend the rest of his days with his grandkids and his kids, and he would have been satisfied. But here's a man next to you who, for the first time, like you said, is really under pressure, per se, and getting asked these real questions. And then,
This is nothing.
what responses are we
But
getting?
look, I'm,
Exactly. That's,
in public life, I would never, ever let anyone know what really bothers me and never show anyone. Because what are they going to do? They're going
hmm.
to attack you
Oh, that's a weapon.
over and over and over again. So just politically, if you're saying that
Yeah.
everyone who asks me a question about my staff are scumbags, um, that you first of all, you're inviting trouble, right? And then you ask yourself, would you want a man like this that gets that pissed off at this with their hand on the
Yeah.
nuclear button? I know I wouldn't. That's for sure. And I noticed something that the vice president Didn't just stop there. He went off on Republicans in general about 3 days later, 3 or 4 days later, I think. But his thesis of this statement was, um, gosh, guys, while we have all these problems, and, name the problems, crime, housing, blah,
Okay.
blah, we have GOP up here that is up here more worried about Ukraine, etc. Um, and pretty much threw Republicans under the bus who would dare ask questions about the Ukraine peace plan that they were hearing for the first time online. So I think
Hmm.
this whole tough guy thing and this whole, I'm an outsider. No, you're not. You're the vice president. You're
Yeah.
an insider. You're 41 years old. You're absolutely an insider. You're a better suited 41-year-old than anyone in this country. You went to Yale. Fantastic. A lot of people don't get to do that. You worked, in finance. What did he work in? Private equity, right? You
Yeah.
won a race. Only 2 years you served, right? You only won one race, and it was hard fought. And then you were selected for this. So you are as much of an insider as anyone will ever be. So this tough guy persona of, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm an outsider. If you're running on that, Vice President, I want to tell you, as a
Yeah.
strategist, I want to tell you, Vice President, that is the wrong way to run, because the Vice President will only be successful in any administration if that administration is perceived as successful.
Yeah. And for us now, it's like, okay, we have the success as far as policy, but politics has become so much about the politics, whether it's identity
Mm.
politics, right? Whether it's, who's playing the game and who's not. The whole thing, I
Yeah.
mean, about Trump, the aura is he is anti establishment, anti deep state, right? So a true outsider from politics. And so the question I want to ask off of this is, and getting into this overarching conversation of, the Jew hatred. From the beginning, I called it what it was because I knew I knew what I didn't know, and that was pretty much everything. And then I seeped into it and realized, oh, this thing is dense. I could be in here forever as far as Jew hatred. And you're thinking anti-Semitism. You're hearing the ADL version, and then you're hearing the this and the that and both sides. And then you realize, oh no, this is just straight up Jew hatred. That's what's actually going on. And so that's when I could take my own faith and look biblically and look spiritually, and it started clicking and making sense to say, I mean, if this is the enemy's plan from the beginning to eradicate the people that God has chosen for this very specific task, then of course it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to be perpetual and it's going to be found on both sides. It's not a political thing. It's not just going to be on the left or it's going to be everywhere. And so, I guess Nick Fuentes might be the best encapsulation of what is now going on in this new generation and on the right. And so, was he something you anticipated and expected? Did you see this thing happening? And then what is your overall sense about this guy and, this entire Groyper movement?
Well, I think COVID got the right very primed and ready to believe conspiracies. So that's when I saw it starting to bloom. If everything is a lie, right, and you can't trust experts and you can't trust anyone, then you can believe anything. And so again, the oldest conspiracy
Mm,
theory out there is anti-Semitism. So I started to see it
yeah.
then. Um,
Can you explain that, by the way? Because some folks, again, they'll hear just oldest, they think it's just a tagline. What
yeah.
do you mean by
Well,
that?
I mean, the protocols of the Elder of Zion, it said the cosmopolitan Jew, for instance. That was way back when you're hearing now globalist Jew, or you're hearing neocon. There's some other way to say that the Jews have their hand over everything, right? So that's one thing. Um, you know, during Hitler. That's the one thing that the Nazis did was they, put up this, and Hitler put up this lie about Jews are hated everywhere they go, right? They're a problem in every country they go. They need to get out. And so that's something you're hearing today. So that some of the same things, right, that you'll be hearing over and over again. Um, you know, we're bloodthirsty. That's another, old chestnut we get blamed for. And so, and it's really insane for us because it's the pincher method, as you mentioned. On the left, they don't want Israel to exist. On the right, they don't want us to exist, which means we would have nowhere to go, right? But I got something to say. I'm not leaving this party. I'm not leaving this country. No, they're trying to
That's
drive
right.
us out of the party,
Wow.
and I know that. And it's not
Yeah,
just me. It's people like you.
of course.
So,
Of
and we're not
course.
going anywhere. So you can, save your time, save your breath.
And I mean, again, because when I look at it coming from, forever Democrat, being a young black man in America, and it's almost like there's one option for you until you realize, wait a minute, you're standing on the platform of slavery and, the Ku Klux Klan, and you're standing on the
I was
platform
a
of Jim
Democrat
Crow,
also. Yeah.
not even realizing it. Oh, so there
Well,
you
we were
go.
raised, I mean,
And so you,
you don't, we're raised as Democrats. That's just what you are. That is what you
that's, yeah,
do. And for Jews,
yeah.
you become a Republican, and it is, you may lose your family. I mean, that's how
Mm,
embedded that it is, which I think maybe, I don't know if you feel this way, but I do. I risked a lot to be a Republican, to work in Republican politics since 2004. I've risked a lot. So for someone to try to tell me, right, that I'm not welcome, that I'm the problem, etc., I'm not going to put up with it.
yeah. And truth told, I don't believe they are the party. This is a co-op, right? This is a coup in essence.
I think you're right.
Because when I came to be a Republican, I have never felt such an acceptance on the actual Republican platform. Moving from the Bay Area and this soft bigotry of low expectations to a more red part of the state, and I'm with folks who were born in 1940s, and they want to talk to me every day. They see me anywhere in the street in a coffee shop. They want to sit with me for 3 hours, and like I'm having this awakening, right? I would call it like coming out of the conservative closet. And so, it's like, I'm like, that's not what this thing is. When I'm on the internet and, they're basically espousing that I deserve to be in the very same gas chambers, even though they denied that the gas chambers ever existed.
Yeah.
There's that whole thing,
Yeah.
right? But
It's,
s-
there's a lot of hate. Yeah. And,
yeah,
and you're right. Like, where is it coming from, etc. I can tell you it's coming from real people because I've had it before. I've had it, been gang stalked by them. So they do exist. So a lot of people don't know that, but they do. Um, let's see. I mean, I think it's important. I mean, it's ridiculous for anyone to say, well, we don't have to denounce Tucker. We don't have to. You damn sure do, because you denounce a lot of other things that are terrible. And to your point,
yeah,
someone who thinks that 9/11 is an inside job, that Iran is great, that Qatar is great, that's a leftist. Someone that thinks your income should be redistributed, that is a leftist. So if you cannot
yeah.
denounce, I mean, you know somebody by the enemies they have.
That's good. When the jihadists start to support your cause and to stand behind your words and to show you on their television screens, you might be onto something. So back again into the Fuentesification of this generation, because that's something I see. And that's something I feel, God has called me to the forefront of. Being a cusper of millennial and Gen Z, it's like I get this generation, but at the same time, I don't.
Right.
Truth be told, I'm like, where are we going? What is this? Is this
Um,
rage bait? Is this
well, you know, I work on college campuses when I'm covering stories, et cetera, and I have not personally seen it. However, I'm working on a story now out of University of Florida where the Groypers have taken over the Young Republicans. So I know that it exists, and and the thing is it's and I'm just going to say it. It's feel sorry for us. We're and in most cases I think they are white. Okay, we're white Christian Catholic boys, and life isn't turning out like we expected. And you know what? We're going to say whatever we want to say because we don't have any guardrails because we're tired of that. It's grievance
mm,
politics. You're going to hear it with that Penny
oof,
Johnson guy. You're going to hear it with JD Vance. This
mm,
grievance politics. And by the way, it doesn't include all males. It includes white Christian males, and they specified it. So all this talk about it really pisses 40-year-old, men under 40 off and blah, blah, because that's what JD Vance talks about the entire time. Well, that doesn't win elections. So that's a little bit confounding. But you saw Nikki Haley's son come out with this
Yep.
ridiculous thing. Now, it reminds me of the Dave Chappelle skit where the guy was blind, a black guy, and was a
Yeah. Clayton
yeah,
Bigsby,
yeah. It's like
the black white
when they
supremacist.
get you to hate yourself, and we have self-hating Jews, I get it.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
blacks are always accused of being self-hating when they're just voting Republican, but this is a real thing that you got a guy that's an Indian, but he converted to strict Catholicism, this brand that I'm not familiar with. Um, and he's sitting here and saying we should have zero immigration, which is kind of ridiculous. And all
Yeah.
this stuff.
How would he be here if that
And he hasn't
was,
thought it
just asking
through that much.
questions?
Yeah. Um,
Okay. He hasn't thought one. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hasn't done the math on that one. Yeah.
and so it is this. It may be a fad. I think it is because
Mm,
and I loved being back in the days of just having your ass kicked. Because if you say things like that, back when I was growing up, you just get your ass kicked. You never say it again, and you start changing your attitude. We don't have that now,
mm,
right? So I don't know how long it's going to go of these guys, and it is from what I'm hearing when it happens in real life. It is guys making just pretty rough comments to women, like guys you really don't know very well, right? It's not all in good fun.
mhm.
And openly saying things about Indians, blacks, and Jews, like at a young Republican meeting. So it's so absurd. I don't know, because DEI and CRT, it was a bit more subtle. It was talking about history and
Yeah. Cloaking it well.
a little bit
Yeah.
better than go make me a sandwich, B word, and Jews really shouldn't be in America. Because that's how open it is. I mean, there's zero chill to this game.
Yeah. There's no subtlety to it. And I think that's, almost the appeal because when you start seeing guys like, Tucker and Megan, ironically, now using some of the language they're using, I'm like, this is Groyper talk. Is this just an appeal,
What do they use? I
to
mean,
the Frog
yeah,
Nation?
she's using that
Um,
constantly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like all of a sudden, and then he's using the other F word all of a sudden, right? So
Oh, gays for gays.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, okay, never heard this before. I've heard a lot of foolishness. I've heard a lot of hatred, vitriol. I heard everything.
Right.
But all of a sudden, after this
Interesting.
meeting or at this interview, and yeah, yeah, yeah. So those little, I know you're the same way. You're an
Yeah.
observer. So those little subtleties and those nuances
The
mean
whole tough
something.
guy act.
Coded language.
Yeah. This
Exactly.
whole,
And
there's always going to be someone tougher, and one day you're going to get your ass kicked.
yeah,
Metaphorically
yeah.
speaking, in any way. So I find that when you're wanting to tough guy, you can be out tough guyed. It's not smart.
So I do want to make the connection between the jihadist and now this whatever it is that's going on our side, right? I call it a Nazi or neo-Nazi movement because that's what they say, and then they get mad when I say it
Of course.
after they said it. But I'm gonna call it what it is. So there's, they call it the what is it, horseshoe theory, where there's now a connection between the far left and the far right. Do you believe that all of it is organic, or do you believe that there are the tentacles of, external forces per se, the Qataris, the Russians, whatever it may be?
I'm I don't like to believe anything unless I have concrete proof. So
I like it.
I've seen something that suggests proof that Tucker's working with Qatar. A lot of times people will be hateful and act like a jackass for free. And that's usually the simplest way um, to do it. Again, I'm a student of psychology. So when you have somebody like Megyn Kelly, she really desperately wants to be liked. That's all she wants. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen her boudoir pictures, but she posed with like lingerie at one point for a magazine while she was supposed to be a journalist. So this is not something that, this is someone who's desperate for approval. Um, those people are very easy to manipulate. Um,
Yeah.
you know, Yeah, I mean, is it organic? I mean, I think it's very organic when you are showing boys how to act tough, right? I think that's, very, it's probably the most natural thing in the world for a young man to kind of, take off that. I mean, you know that. I mean, there's so much psychology around that. But what makes a leader just start interviewing, I guess we're talking about Tucker, we're going back and forth. What makes a leader start interviewing crazy ass people? Um, Really, what makes Heritage Foundation lose their entire, business model, which is trust, uh,
Yeah.
and expertise. Trust and expertise, that is a think tank. That's their currency. Um, why would they trade that in for Tucker Carlson? Why would the vice president trade in his reputation to protect Tucker Carlson's son?
Yeah.
I don't
Mm.
have the answers. So,
But you have questions. We're just asking questions, right? That's a new
I
thing?
mean, my experience, you can, you know, go to jail for just asking questions on X, but that's for another show.
Well, okay, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to cover that one because that is one way. It's interesting. It's like the Tommy Robinson who all of a sudden
Yeah,
Tucker doesn't know exists, even though he had him on years ago. It's this thing of let's create a yeah, okay, because there's a story of how Sloan has spent some time behind the cold bars, and that's like the first,
3
second,
hours.
third, fourth story that
For
shows
3
up,
hours,
right? And so there we
and I'm
go.
gonna be very rich,
three
and I'm in a
hours,
federal lawsuit. So, yeah.
3 hours,
Mhm,
and you're in a federal lawsuit suing these individuals, and yet three, four, five, six searches down, and that's the story. And that's why I'm like this. That's where this propaganda machine comes in.
mhm,
Because for me, I did my own due diligence,
mhm.
not Google.
Right.
Go and listen to what you're actually saying. What is the
Well, it
story
is a
actually
big
about as
deal
much as I can
because in
grasp?
this country, we don't get arrested for making an X post complaining about anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah, not here. That's only in the
That
UK.
happened here.
And it's not
That
happening there
happened here,
either,
and you're
right?
talking to the person. Of course, I'm not allowed to say
That's
anything until after I win my case, but I'll be back on.
wow. Okay, so yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get in that one. And purposely, I didn't get into that because I didn't want to cloud it. But thank God you mentioned it as you did, right? And folks can go out there and do their own due diligence. Because again, it's when you conflate this whole, the Andrew Tate, the Matrix is after me thing,
It's
but then there's
yeah.
when this actually
Ad
is.
hominem attacks on
Go
the
ahead.
speaker is the oldest thing in the book. So, um, I'm in public life. I know that that happens. It happens to everyone. Every civil rights leader has a mugshot. Every single civil rights leader worth their salt has a mugshot, and I'm no different.
That's true. I pray that people continue to use their own faculties, use their own reasoning and such, because you can see straight through it
Yes,
if you want
it's
to.
unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's abusive, but people will try to abuse you in service of silencing you. Um, yeah, nobody likes to be demonized like that, but it is you know, s- it being in the public, um, will get you scrutiny. I never asked for the president or vice president to put attention on me. I never tagged him. I never really talked about him. I talked about
Yeah.
his office. But he chose me. And so I'm gonna make
Yeah.
sure I keep speaking.
Absolutely. And so I want to end it off with this. What do you think is the most important thing we as the public need to be thinking through right now?
Hmm. There's there's a lot. I mean, it's such a vast question. If we're politically attuned, I guess, yeah, I mean, I think we need to look at how we're being manipulated. Um, most families in America are worried about how they're going to pay their tripling healthcare bills, right? How they're going to afford things like that. So I'm not sure if they're really in this conversation. But what I've been saying
Yeah.
is, been in politics long enough to know that they will, because while the public doesn't know Tucker Carlson's name as a household name, or especially Nick Fuentes, the Democrats are going to
Yeah.
be paying a lot of money this election season, and they both will be a household name. And the things that Nick Fuentes
Mm,
said, it will be a household name, and it will go down to everyone in the Republican Party, whether they're running for dog catcher or DA or sheriff, rightly or wrongly, because that's how these things work. And so while people were playing footsies with Tucker Carlson, and they're, oh, I'm not going to cancel and blah blah. Um, if you're in politics and doing that, and you actually want the party to win, you're an idiot. So
That
yeah,
I like the part where you said, you think it's not your problem until it is. One of the last conversations I had with a friend of mine, Keisha King, you might
yes, I
know who
do.
she is, but
Yeah.
oh yeah. So she was speaking of how, when you're campaigning grassroots on the ground, having to knock on doors, now you have to answer back. So what's this thing that Tucker says? You know what I mean? Now it's in real life that these ramifications are. And we didn't even get into the Queen of Conspiracy, which we might have to do a whole nother segment, seeing where that loony
Yeah.
bin it gets us in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm glad we covered the ground that we did.
Yeah.
And you have the same echoed sentiment, which God has continued to put on my heart, which is do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. Because if you're not awake to what's going on, you will be. It's really that
Oh,
simple.
yeah. I mean, I was a Democrat until I experienced terrorism. Things that you
Mm,
don't you think can happen to someone else or someone else's problem, et cetera. And anti-Semitism and racism is one of them because, people are even in our own party, especially will poo-poo that. Oh, that's just the left talking. Uh-uh. The left hides it better. The left hides it better, which means they're going to do better in elections. It doesn't mean that they're less than. And unfairly, we're going to have a lot of very good candidates maligned by this stuff because they're not speaking out about it. So if you are a candidate or you are thinking about running, even if it's school board or whatever, you better speak out now and you better speak out loudly and make sure that you're on record. Because if you go on record during the campaign, it's going to be too late. And I'm promising you, it will be too late.
beautiful. Well, Sloan, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for making this time for
Thank
us. And
you.
yeah, folks out there, let us know in the comments if you have any other questions. So when we do our roundabout, hopefully we're at a place also where you're allowed to speak about more of what's going on that other side of the case. But I'd love for you to keep us updated on that
Thank you so
and anything we can do to help. So where can folks find you? How can they, tune into what you got going on?
Well, NC Political T on Substack. NC like the state.
Okay.
Political T.
Okay.
You can find me. You can also find my personal Substack, but I'm also on X. I mean, I get in a
Okay.
lot of trouble on X, actually. Sloan Rachmuth, Rachmuth. So I love the platform.
Beautiful. Okay. So we'll make sure to get those in the caption below. If you could send those my way. Till the next time, appreciate you guys. Thank you, Sloan.
Thank you.
Peace. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, yeah. Staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, yeah. I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind. I've been getting visions of the other kind. Yeah, I've been up for weeks. I'm in the count of blessings over count of sheep. I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me. I used to be the pleaser for the